Hello, and welcome back to the Pivot Point podcast, where me, your host, Jessica McGann, and my guests explore the pivotal moments that shape our lives. Today's episode is for the entrepreneurs and for the bakers. If you fit into either of those categories, you are sure to love today's episode with my guest, Naomi Rose. In 2018, Naomi decided to train and race in her very first ever marathon, which then in turn inspired her to quit her office job to follow her passion for baking. Through grit, passion, tenacity, and perseverance, Naomi navigated the wild world of opening and running a cafe and bar. And not just under normal everyday circumstances, my word, no, but rather through the global pandemic. In this episode, Naomi takes us through the mental and emotional hurdles she faced, the problems she solved, and how she was able to be successful through it all. Today, Naomi is the proud owner and founder of Baking Boss. In 2018, she opened a cafe and bar and bakery, which became nationally award-winning for its homemade bread. Early in 2023, she took everything she learned and turned it into her new business, Baking Boss, where she teaches online baking workshops as well as supports other bakers with their businesses. Naomi has a lot to share with us today, so without further ado, let's dive in. Naomi, I am so excited to dive into this conversation with you. Thank you so much for joining me all the way from the UK. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm enjoying this rainy day. It feels a little bit like England here. It's a bit rainy and dark today in my office.
Well, as it happens, the sun has just decided to pour through my top window, so hence why I'm half in darkness and half in bright sunlight, because I can't see anything.
Oh my goodness. Well, you look great from my end, and I'm sure any of the
thank
viewers.
you.
So I'm excited to dive into this conversation with you. As we kind of talked about before I pressed that record button, there's two different kinds of pivotal moments that I've noticed in my experience and from the interviews I've had so far, is that there's moments that happen to us, like the car accident or a family divorce or a betrayal. And for you in this conversation, it was a aha moment of sorts. A change that came from and within you. And I've experienced these moments myself, and I love hearing other people's journeys through these moments. So I'm really excited to hear this story from you.
Yes, I suppose really, actually, it probably started back in 2017. So I'd been in a job. I worked 9 to 5 for a long time. I headed up a digital team. I worked in offices and we did digital marketing communications. Quite fun job, in fairness, but it wasn't challenging me in any way, shape or form anymore. And for some unbeknown reason, which I don't know why, but I thought, I feel like I'm going to run a marathon. And I'd only run all of about 5 miles at this point and thought it might be an easy task to undertake. How much further is it? It's like 26 miles. It's like 5 times it. It was so difficult.
Do you remember like where you were when you just had this download of, I should run a marathon? Like, were you at a marathon? Were you watching people run on the streets? Like, where did that come from?
Well, we had a run club at work, and we went out after work at least once a week, just to, it was either 1 or 2, 3 or 4 of us, or whoever was sort of available, and did 5K. And I kind of got into running a bit more from that. And I'd done the odd 5K here and there for charity and stuff, but I wasn't a runner. Runner was not my thing. And I think I was just getting bored of the monotony of being in an office, and I thought I really need to just push myself and just prove to myself I can do something. And it was something I thought, it kind of lurks in the back of your mind of things you want to achieve in life, and that was one of them that I kind of like, I'll be great to be able to said I've done that. So I thought, right, well, what am I waiting for? I've got a stable job, it's not testing me, why don't I do it now? And yes, I didn't quite really anticipate how much it would take over, and the training, and I was fundraising as well, so I was raising money for charity. But the actual reward of doing it and getting to the finish line and achieving something quite, well, mammoth really, for someone that hadn't really run much, just kind of went, I'm the only one that's putting all of these limits on myself. Why am I
Mm.
stopping myself from doing what I want to do when actually I've just proved to myself I could do a lot more than I thought? And that's when I kind of thought, "Oh, I just don't want to do this job for the rest of my life. I don't want to be
Oh.
working for someone else for the rest of my life." And
Did that
I'd
come
it,
from completing the race or in the process of running or in the process of training for this marathon?
the training for the marathon hurt. It was definitely tough. I'll say that it was harder than I expected, and I hadn't really anticipated. I injured myself because I tried to overtrain, and then I couldn't run for about a month. So I had to then, which probably in a way helped because I had to change to swimming, and that actually probably built up my strength a lot better than actually doing the aggressive running as it happened.
Ah.
So it actually really kind of refought, but the actual when I was doing the marathon, it was all I could think about for about 4 months. It was everything. I was eating, everything I was doing was everything was wrapped around doing the marathon. I had to really completely rethink how I did everything. So it was after I'd done that, I kind of thought, I've got the freedom to do whatever I want because I've proved to myself that actually, if I put my mind to something, I can achieve something more than I thought. So
Mm.
that's where I kind of got the idea of like, I just want to be my own boss. I don't want to work for anybody else. And so it kind of went from there. And I quit my job. I have been known to quit my jobs without any other jobs in the past before because I just think, well, if I'm done in a job, I'll just leave because there's no point in me hanging on because I'm just not going to enjoy it. And as humans, we're normally survivors, so I will figure something out afterwards, which is what I normally do.
So
So
you weren't like you weren't secure. You had no idea where you were going next. You just knew that this job was not for you. It was not adding value to your life. You were unhappy with it and you were quick to move. You're
yeah,
like, nope, no longer for me. I got to go. I'll find something else. Bye.
exactly. So I'd kind of handed in my notice, and my company I was working for saying, "Would you mind just staying for one more year and just covering a maternity cover for us?" And you can, but I said only on the basis that the role I was in gets filled permanently because I'm not coming back, and I don't want to cause people wondering whether they're going to have jobs or not at the end of this. Basically, I'll do this and then I'm gone. So my team couldn't really understand that I hadn't got a plan. They just were like, "So you've quit and you're not going to come back?" Yeah. How? Like, well, I'll figure it out. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I'll figure out something.
Did you
And
have any like children or dependents at this time, or were you free
no,
to do as you
just
please?
I was in a very lucky position that I could
Yeah.
just do what I want, and I didn't necessarily have like children to look after. So when I got to a point where I was kind of starting to think, well, I'm going to need to figure out what I want to do, and I knew I wanted to work for myself. I was thinking maybe I'll do a digital consultancy or something like that, and that's when the building in my local town became available, and it was a disused nightclub, and it was, you can imagine, disused nightclub that hadn't been used in 12 years.
Don't want to
But
imagine that. Don't want to
no, no,
imagine.
it was not nice. It really wasn't nice. But underneath all of that not niceness was this beautiful Art Deco 1920s building that still had so much original history. And I was like, this would make an amazing cafe and bar, and it needs to be brought back to life because all of this history has been lost. And it kind of snowballed from there. So I'd gone sort of thinking, I'm going to just work for myself, to then suddenly going, I'm going to have a cafe and bar. I like baking. I've always baked. And everything I did fundraising for the marathon, I baked. I used to go on baking courses, and that would be just so good to do that. I love doing that. So that's where it went. And I think my last day in my job was in the November, and we'd been working on getting the building up to scratch, and then we opened in the December. So it had gone really quickly.
Oh my gosh, yeah, things moved but it sounds to me like you were just open to all of it. You were open to receiving that. I'm a little bit spiritual and hippy dippy, but like you were open to receiving help from the universe. You were looking for new opportunities. And when they presented you with one, you were able to see it as something for you. Did you know anything about, like, if I thought about opening a shop or a bakery, I feel like my mind would completely take over and like tell me like, I don't know how to run a business. I don't know how to like, where would the money come from? Fear, fear, fear. Did any of that happen for you? Or were you just in this full feeling of like, I know I will figure this out?
It was a real mix of both. I mean, it was a complete emotional roller coaster. And my skill set, I'm a project manager that's where I'm happy
Yeah.
being project managing. So I thought, right, okay, I know what I need to do to get the doors open. I'm going to work backwards and work out what I need to learn to get there. And it was a huge learning curve. I didn't know anything about building control. I didn't know anything about environmental health, but it was a complete team effort. And my husband mostly managed the trades coming in. So one day we had 9 different trades in there, because stuff like the parquet flooring, which was beautiful by the time we finished it, it really wasn't when we started it. It took 8 weeks to polish that up. It was the biggest part of
Oh,
actually restoring the building.
oh
And
my
that's
goodness.
and that, on my list it was like, I've got to do the marketing, I've got to figure out how to employ people, I've got to figure out all the legal HR, all the contracts. And I just wrote a massive project management list and worked through it. And days were like, yes, I've got this. And then other days were like, I'm in a complete panic, what the hell have I done, and I cannot do this. It was really like completely, it was mad. And
Talk me through those
when we came,
moments. I'm sorry, but
oh,
like talk me
go
through
on.
those moments where you just were like, did I do the wrong thing? Or I just want to give up. Like, this is so much harder than I thought it was going to be, because entrepreneurship really does that. Like, new business owners, we all experience these moments of, wow, this is a mountain much higher than I thought initially when I started climbing it. How did you get yourself through those moments of, I don't want to do this anymore?
It was tough, and sometimes it was a matter of taking a step back and going and talking to people. And my original deadline for getting it open was actually the 25th of November, so we'd actually started the build in October, but we just weren't going to be ready. And the reason I put it at that date was because our town had got their Christmas light switch on, and I thought that'd be perfect to open then. As it probably happened, it was much better opening when we did, which was about 2 weeks later or so. And we were much better prepared. We'd had a bit more time to put everything together, and we could go in, even though I thought a lot of the hard work had been done up until opening day. I had no idea how opening December, busiest month of the year.
Oh my gosh.
And it
Yeah.
was new technology, new systems, new customers, we're figuring out food service. And we started, we kind of knew that the first, there'd be teething problems. I accommodated for the worst case scenario of what if no one came in. I didn't accommodate for what if everybody came in. So I had to find new staff very quickly, because we had a small team and my staff doubled almost by January because it was so busy, which was great. It's a great problem to have. But I was then sort of confronted with people complaining about slow service, and different days of the week were so different in terms of service. So the weekdays were very different to weekends, where everybody's in a very different mood and mindset on a weekend. You really got, like, in the week it was a bit more steady and you could manage it, but on the weekends we started calling Saturdays Savage Saturdays, because it was a whole different way you had to run service, because it was so much busy and people were out, they wanted to get stuff done, they didn't want to wait, and we were still new, we were still learning. Everything was a bit of a learning curve.
Had you worked in the service industry at all, like as a young kid, growing up, like waitressing at a cafe or anything like that?
I'd done about 6 months at my local pub. So it was I had a bit of an inkling, but it was very much a country bumpkin kind of pub. So nothing compared to this sort of different service. I hadn't, my team, we had barista training. We had to learn all about the coffee. We had to learn all about the different teas, even like planning what to put on the menu and how that actually works physically, and storing all the food ingredients, how service would work if you had multiple different things on. Again, it was a completely different way of working, and of course all new equipment. So it was really,
it's all new. It seems all very new.
Yeah. And the team I had, they were fantastic. We just we worked very collaboratively together, because that was my method. I work collaboratively with my team, because I know that having worked in digital, you learn that there are people like web developers, that I am not a developer by any means, even though I lead digital teams and that's what I've done in the past. But the developers, they have a whole different level of understanding. I just need them to do the job. I don't need to know how to do the job. So I took that approach into my team of like, you are going to know so much more than me about working in the kitchen because you've done it before, unlike me. So let's work together to figure out how this is going to work for you and for me, because there's no point in me telling you, because I'm not experienced in this, but you've done this before, so let's do that. So it was a really good way of working and building that relationship with the team. And it wasn't me making all the decisions by myself. We were figuring it out together. And I think by sort of Easter the following year, we'd realised that we'd got the sink in the wrong place in the kitchen. So we ripped it out and moved it, because it wasn't quite working in terms of workplace. So there was so many different things that just adapted and changed as we grew and as we learned. And
it sounds like you're very good. It sounds like you're a very collaborative leader, which I think is one of the best ways to lead. Like you didn't present yourself as I'm the boss, so I know better than everyone. It was, you're an expert here. You're an expert here. I hired you because I trust you and I'm excited to partner with you. I think that's really beautiful.
Yes. I think sometimes it can be a good thing and sometimes it could be a negative in a way, or when you have to be quite authoritative, it can sometimes work in the wrong way, but it's finding that right balance. But certainly, as it was a completely new thing, everybody was learning as we went along, and we adjusted, we changed, customers changed. We then had COVID right in the middle of it, which also then completely changed everything. So we started with a cafe and bar, and partly because the cafe was what I love to do. I like to do the baking. My team that I employed, they also like to bake, so it worked really well. The bar was going to be gins, wines, quite easy service, but we realised that everybody wanted cocktails. And naively, I thought, there's quite a few cocktail places, so we'll offer something different. No, people want cocktails. So within the first 4 months, we got a cocktail bar manager in, and just completely redid a whole drinks menu, and it worked really well. So that way then the bar was kind of like the cash cow of the business. It was the side that actually brought in the money much more than the cafe. So they paired quite well together, and we could do the live music events and all these other bits. But obviously we had 15 months before COVID came in. So it was then a completely different challenge, and one that the whole world was in together. We're trying to figure out then how to go through navigating. And in the UK, they changed the rules on who could be with who could sit with who.
UK had a hard time.
Yeah.
UK and Canada, we both just like really suffered during that time.
It was tough, and you could feel, the hospitality industry, every time like the government would change their mind on who could sit with who, or varying different rules, we would sit down and we'd have 2 days to figure out then a new complete operational way of working. At that, my team would have to enforce with customers. It was kind of like such a bizarre time to go through.
Yeah, I was a waitress and bartender for 10 years. It was a really great time. It supported my life of travel. And I remember during COVID being like, I am so grateful that I am not in the hospitality business right now, because that industry is just getting destroyed. It got destroyed by COVID, like with angry customers and people who didn't want to wear masks, and then the government's like the distancing, and then the patios, and it was just a nightmare.
Yeah, it was really tough. And in my town, there was a lot of regulars, and a lot of them didn't come back because they were not because they were afraid of how we were managing it, because they said the opposite. They were just going back out socially was really hard for them. So it took a little while, and because I think in 2020 we've been open close. The bar had been shut for quite a long time, which was very frustrating from my perspective. People were definitely very nervous about coming in, but there was lots of laws on drinking and things in the evening as well. And in 2021, I thought, I'm not going to do delivery to start with, because we weren't set up for it. We weren't able to get stock. We weren't able to get so many things. So when we went into lockdown, we just locked down. And then 2021, I thought, I might just see if people want like afternoon teas or something delivered, because we've got Valentine's Day, we got Mother's Day. They're all lovely days. And maybe, you know, people might need like just to pick me up, because this is going on a bit. And that worked really well. And actually, if nothing else, it kept myself and my team a little bit sane, because we could actually come in and do a bit of work and then sit at home. So I was out delivering, they were helping me to bake stuff, we're boxing them all up in lovely boxes. And it was a really kind of nice thing to do. And during that time of being sort of in the lockdown, I started making bread again, because my ethos was support. I was local, so I want to support local. So all of the majority of my suppliers were local. And one we'd had no end of problems with was a bakery, and they'd, partly because they were just struggling with staff, so we'd get bread orders arrive at lunchtime when we open at 9. And of course, one of the biggest things that we sold was breakfasts and sandwiches, and we're having to run out and get supermarket bread because our supply was letting us down. So I was like, we can't keep doing this anymore. It's not.
And of course the customers don't know that. The customers go, why are you serving me this? Right? They don't know that it's not your fault.
Exactly. So I thought, I just really enjoy making bread, and in the chaos of kind of getting the business set up, it just had to go to one side. So I thought, actually, if we're just serving bread for the cafe, I could do small batches and we'd just serve it as normal bread. And that's when people started saying, where do you get your bread from? I'm like, well, we'll make it here. I'm like, can I buy some? I'm like, well, yes. So we started doing low level stuff, and it made me think, maybe my town wants a bakery. Maybe this is something they want. And we had a room out the back that had been used for kind of keeping all the group bookings out the way of the main space, because in groups people tend to get quite loud, and we had big tall ceilings in our building. So just for anyone else that came in when we had a group in, it was just not a great experience. So we used to put the groups out there, but with COVID, we couldn't do big groups. I'm like, actually, this space would make a great bakery. And I'd gone to the bank and said, could we get a small loan? They went, because they were doing resilience loans. So this was a way to help businesses sort of get back on their feet again. And the bank said, no, because you're not making any profit. I'm like, we're breaking even. Surely that's not a bad thing in the middle of COVID.
Yeah,
went,
truly.
No, so it kind of defeated the object of what a resilience loan was, given that you weren't making any profits. It's not really resilience. But anyway, I thought, well, maybe I'll just, one of my friends said, well, why didn't you crowdfund? I'm like, it never even occurred to me. Actually, this is a genius idea, because if I say to my local community, I really want to build a bakery, would you be interested in investing in what we're doing? And they say yes, I'll know this is onto a winner. And it worked. So that was quite something. I'd launched campaigns before in my past, but nothing like this, nothing where I thought I'd get the backing we did. And we exceeded.
How much money did you raise? Yeah.
We had a target of £15,000 in the UK. We got to 17. So we've gone well and truly over. Thank you. And we had 300 people backed us as well, which was amazing. And of course, they were investors. And I mean, having done the crowdfunding campaign, why I didn't think of it sooner, I don't know. But actually, what was great was I got 300 people that some were already customers, but some weren't necessarily customers. But then I had a ready-made pool of people that were going to come into my place to pick up their rewards or engage with us in some way. Like, this is a great way to start a business, is have like the community behind you. So I found it was really difficult finding bakers in my town because it's quite small and we weren't in the main city, but I found a baker who was going to be my head baker, and together we sort of put together the bread. And I was like, I'm going to have to do sourdough, which I have not got on with before because I just never could get it to work correctly, but sourdough is trendy.
So yeah, sourdough like really trended during COVID.
Yeah. I'm like, there's no way I could open a bakery without having sourdough. So we practiced for 2 months. It was literally, we had batches of loaves, and I think the Christmas of 2022 we broke up for Christmas because I let my staff have some time with their family over Christmas. And it was just on the report, because we reported every time we baked something, because we were trying to work out how to make everything work really well. And at the bottom, it's like came out flat again, sad face. And that
What
was
do you
the
mean?
battle
Oh,
we had.
like you
The
documented it,
bread.
like you kept like a
Yeah.
spreadsheet or something of like what we did
Yeah.
and whether or not it worked or not. Okay.
Yeah. So in the process of making something like sourdough, you've got your starter, which you have to then feed and nurture. Once you've fed it, you've got to then wait till you can use it in your bread. So the whole train of processes to get it to where it needs to be. And it's a timeline. So if you want it, say, by Saturday, we would start it on Thursday. So again, it was quite a process of getting it right, but it just wasn't working for us. We just weren't getting it right. And over that Christmas, I just played about with it. Took it on like, that's it. I've got to go back to basics. I'm going to get my scientist hat on, and I'm going to treat this like an experiment. I'm not going to keep getting infuriated by the fact we can't get this spread right. And something just clicked. I changed how I fed the starter by 25 grams of water. That was it. That was all it needed for us to get it right to what we needed it to be. And it suddenly just started to work.
Baking is such a science. It is such a science.
Yeah, it was crazy. And so when I went back in after Christmas and we started baking, then bulking up to do the batches again, it started working. I was like, that's it, we're going to open in the January. Great. So we'd opened and it was fantastic. We had the mayor come in, we did the whole ribbon cutting thing. So it was awesome.
Didn't you win an award for your loaf, like best loaf? Was that your
Yes.
sourdough loaf?
Well, actually, as it happened, after we'd opened, I'd had an email saying, do you want to enter Britain's Best Loaf Awards? And I thought, you know what, I'll enter. I'm not going to tell my team because they will freak out that I've even done this. But I'm kind of thinking, actually, the local community love our bread, but it'd be good to go and actually talk to a judge and find out what we could do better, how we could improve it. So I thought we would network with some other bakeries, get to know a few people that are like the best bakeries in the country, and we'll go to an exhibition where they have lots of different food on. So it's part of a food expo as well. I'm like, sounds like a great day out to me. And, you know, we get to get a bit of feedback. And so I entered into 5 different categories, the white loaf being one, granary, sourdough, and then there was another couple that sort of had what they call inclusions in. So these were breads that had like extra seeds added in, or, you know, anything like that. So and a special category. So we did a few different categories. And when I eventually told my team with about a month to go, because I thought I'm not going to tell them because they will start to panic about it. And yes, my head baker, I think, left the end of a shift and didn't even say goodbye. It's like, what have you done? I'm like, look, it's just going to be a learning experience. Just take it as a learning thing. And, you know, it'll be a nice day out. We're going to go on a jolly. We'll all go in the car together. It'll be great fun. And the judging is one of the most serious things I've ever watched. They are proper. There's about 9 judges. They're all in lab coats.
9?
And you 9. And they've got hundreds of loaves. There's literally tables of them in different categories. And you watch them and they're cutting it, they're pulling it apart, they're looking at the crust, they're discussing it. You can't hear anything they're saying because they whisper it to each other. So we're all standing there trying to watch and work out what they're saying. And in the end, it was too much. So we all had to walk away and go do something else. I thought, we'll just come back at the awards sort of ceremony and then find out who's won all the categories. And we then won for the white farmhouse loaf, which was we were all completely gobsmacked that we'd even won it. And I think my head baker at the time said, "You've got to be joking." Like, I just couldn't believe. I mean, the bread was really good, and we worked so hard. And I think it's just credit to how much they worked. The sourdough was, as you can imagine, one of the biggest categories. So there was a lot of entries into the sourdough. I think we came around 3rd, and it was because we just put a bit too much flour on the top. It was literally that much in it. So after all of that work, to know that we were so close to getting that, it was actually really kind of, we're just nearly there. So that's really good to sort of know. And it was a really great event, and it was fantastic. So it was such a reward to have kind of got that. And then obviously we've got all the press and media off the back of that as well for when we came back from that, which was really great. But, you know, it was one of those situations where we're sort of like, that's, we've done really well, this is going to really change a lot of things, and particularly after the last couple of years. But then we were clobbered immediately pretty much afterwards by the cost of living crisis, because we had so many big problems here in the UK. My flour deliveries went from 3 days, literally overnight, to 14 days. And it's not like we went for a small amount of flour. So I spent a lot of nights trying to find flour so my bakery team
That's
could come
right.
in.
There was a shortage on all of the, like a bunch of, like, even wasn't like the baking powder, or there was a bunch of shortage. Everything.
Anything. And the prices just skyrocketed. Things went up so much. And including energy bills here just went from some bakeries, because every bakery was being sort of hit from all angles, because the energy went up from, some bakeries were paying £1,500 a month to 5 figures a month. And you're like, this is unsustainable. How do we make this work? Because it's just so astronomical. And it kind of, everything sort of just kind of snowballed from there, really, because customers tightened their belts on how much they were spending, suppliers were putting up their costs, and it was so hard. And staff, of course, had their attitudes had slightly changed, whereas over COVID a lot of people were coming in, and I'd been very lucky. I was still very lucky to the very end with some of my core staff, but I went through more staff in that last year, sort of after the bakery opened, than the whole 3 years beforehand, because people just didn't want to work in the same way anymore. And of course, as you know, service isn't an easy industry to be in.
Absolutely not.
So it was quite having gone from such a high to suddenly having to deal with all of this sort of firing from all sides was really challenging. So I
can imagine it was throwing you a lot of curveballs at the time.
Oh, there was a lot of, it was a lot of curveballs, and I was at that point then having to cover all the gaps. So I was working ridiculously long hours a week. It was, and particularly because even like the bar staff weren't turning up to their shifts, and this was a constant sort of repeat pattern. And in the end, I had to, the bar, had to close the bar because we just weren't getting footfall. So it was the same across my town.
You had to close the rest. You had to close the bakery or the bar? Just the bar.
I had, in the end, at the beginning of this year, I had to close the whole lot because it just wasn't financially viable anymore. And it was absolutely a great business idea, just at the wrong time and in the wrong place. And it was just no longer going to work. And it was the last decision I wanted to make, because everyone had worked so hard. But I'm like, you know what? We did exactly what we could. There's nothing more we could have done. This is the right decision for myself as well as a business, because I was pretty much on my last legs and couldn't really do much more than I'd already done. And what I'm going to do now is just take everything I've learned and turn it into the business I'm doing now. So starting again. So I've now got another business, which is great. So I had forgotten how much you have to do at the start of a business. So that's definitely been an interesting roller coaster. But I'm doing that now because when I opened up the cafe and bar, I did everything by learning it from Google. There wasn't
and
someone
YouTube.
who went, and
so
YouTube,
great.
all of that. But there was no one really there was lots of consultants that would do big restaurants or food products, but there wasn't anyone that really did small to medium sized baking businesses or cafes and bars in local towns. And if I'd had someone that could mentor me, it would have been probably a lot easier and a lot smoother, and I would have made far less mistakes. So that's what I'm sort of doing now, is I'm teaching people how to bake, because I still love baking and I'm always baking stuff here, so why not share what I'm doing? And then I'm also helping baking businesses either start up, grow their business, turn it from a side hustle, because it's a really great industry. But if your zone of genius is baking, it's not necessarily business, and that's a whole different ball game. So that's what I'm here to help with, is to really kind of marry those two together and show that you can do something you're passionate about, but this is how you need to run, these are the tools you need to do to help your business. So that's where incredible. I'm kind of now. So it's definitely been a roller coaster.
It's been such a roller coaster. And what I really started to pick up from listening to you is that you have really amazing skills that serve you really well. I almost want to call you like the queen of flow because, and maybe this is just from the conversation and there's obviously so much more depth when you're in it and pressure. But it sounds to me like you were very good at listening to your intuition and your gut and observing what was going well and what wasn't, listening to what people wanted, figuring out how you can give that to them. And when problems arise, it sounds like you were really good at finding solutions and not letting the problem get the best of you. Is that fair to say?
To some extent it was. Certainly having to work the long hours in that last year, it pushed me beyond my limits, and it was very hard to see the wood for the trees because some of my weeks were 80 hours and they were on your feet because, you know, I'll be in the bakery until gosh knows what time, and then I'll be up again at 5. So it was long hours that physically were demanding, and you know, bread dough is not light. It's like you're moving around a lot. So, and particularly through that particular summer, it was very hot. So that is not the ideal temperature for a bakery. And of course, you know, there would be things that the dishwasher would flood. It'd be like right in the middle of service because when else would it do it?
Of course,
so
of course.
You have no time to really consider about worrying about it. You just have to get on and do it. But it absolutely pushed me to my limits, and that's what I don't want other people to do, because my business became before everybody else, and it was a matter of just trying to make sure it survived, because I felt like I owed that to my staff and my customers that had put so much trust in me. And actually, looking back on it now, I was naive to think I could actually beat a global pandemic, having not really got the cash flow to be able to do it, because it needed cash flow to survive, and I wasn't in that position because we balanced it all the way through COVID because we hadn't had enough time to really build up a supply before it went into COVID. So I think it was a whole mixture of emotions. And certainly now I've come into this new business, I've kind of realized actually there are things I could do a lot differently, and that's where I can really help people, because I've learned from what I did. And they, the business, I was working for the business, not letting the business work for me, and I should have balanced that better. It wasn't always possible, but I should have done.
And you get to be now the person that you wish you had by your side. Like you get to be that person for someone else. And I'm a believer that everything happens for a reason, and that life happens for us, not to us. And what I hear even is like, maybe that cafe wasn't meant to be. Maybe that wasn't what you were meant to do. Maybe what you were meant to do is what you're doing right now, is helping people. Like you have so much experience, like your project management background and your love of baking allowed you to be so successful in that bakery. You had really amazing skills that could help you in that way. And now, because you went to hell and back trying to run this bakery and it was successful and you won awards, and now you get to leave that stress and leave those long ass hours and leave the being on your feet all the time, be comfortable in your own world and help other people achieve what they're looking to achieve in their bakeries. And that's just beautiful. Do you feel this way, or am I touching in the wrong spots?
No, this definitely works much better for me. I know I'm not very good at working for other people, and I think I would struggle going back to work for other people. I'm not very good at being told what to do. So
me too, girl.
Some people are just not born that way. So I think now I'm kind of much more in control of what I want to do. And I mean, it still has a different kind of roller coaster, because some days you're like, I just can't see how this is ever going to work. Or what am I thinking? And then other days you're like, I've got this. It's now, I can see the results coming in, and the emotions still are there. It's just a whole different ball game.
I feel like every time that I have those, like, I want to burn it all to the ground and like I want to give up, the universe like gives me like a piece of hope. Like I get someone who books a session, or I get a really amazing review, and I'm like, oh, Okay, yeah. Okay, yes, I can keep going. But it is,
Yeah,
it's such a
absolutely.
roller coaster of highs and lows. Naomi, what have you learned in the process of this change? You're changing consistently. You're always adapting. What have you learned through this whole process?
Probably the biggest thing I learned was I need to put myself first more. And as daft as it sounds, it was something that, my team became, anyone in my business came before me, and it was the wrong way round to have done it, because actually without me the business doesn't work. And I need to make sure that if I need downtime, it's what I need to get the job done. And it's just rethinking, putting my mindset differently. It's kind of like when I listen to different coaches, they talk about, I'm a musician, so my background is music, but I used to work in a theatre, and I would see the riders that would come in. So these are all they like to call them the demands that the artists have. But actually what they're doing is they're setting themselves up to give them the best performance possible. And who are we to judge that? Because if they know what they want and they're clear on what they want, however random that might be, and there were some really random ones.
There are very random ones.
But, but they go for great performance on stage. That's what you need to do your job. That's what you need. And that's the one thing I think I'm learning, to be comfortable what I need to be able to do what I do now. And not something I really did when I was necessarily at running that business, because sometimes you just had to forget, all your needs and put the business first, because that's how fast you had to move. You didn't really have much of a choice. You just had to put a pin in what you felt and get on with the job. And it wasn't ever going to work like that long term, because all I end up doing is burning myself out, which doesn't work. So that is definitely the biggest lesson, that I needed to be realistic on what I needed, not realistic on what other people needed. So that was definitely my biggest learning, for sure.
Yeah, we have to fill our own cups. If we're givers and we're doers and we're giving so much, you have to be giving to yourself at the same time, or you will burn out. Like, rest is productive. We all need it. If you don't sleep for a couple of days, just watch how crazy you go. Like, give yourself the rest that you need. And some days, especially for us women with our cycles, there are days where I can give 150%. And there are days where the best that I can give in this day is to watch one YouTube class, or do one TikTok video, or advertise on Instagram, or read a chapter of a book. Like, it varies, and it's okay. Because if that's what you need, give that to yourself so that you can keep moving forward and keep doing what you really want to be doing, which is running your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you hope the listeners take away from this story? What would be your message, especially to the entrepreneurs or people looking to start their own bakery? What would your message be for them?
I think the biggest thing is just to, like I say, it's to make sure the business is going to work for you. Be realistic
work for
on what
you.
Yeah, not you for it. It's got to work for you. Work out what you can, what realistically you can manage, because if you're unrealistic, and I am that person that is unrealistic on how much I can achieve, you won't be able to deliver and be happy with it. So just be really honest with yourself about what you're wanting to get out of it at the end of the day. And actually, even if it's just, financial goals, is it personal gain goals, what are those goals? Just be really open and honest with yourself about that, because then your business will be really successful, because you'll know where you're heading and you'll be realistic on what you can do to achieve those. And allow yourself to have that downtime, because again, it's a physical job. You're on your feet for a long time, and particularly if you're, say, in the wedding cake industry or something like that, you can deal with some quite demanding customers at times. So again, you have to allow yourself the time to be able to deal with all the customer queries, all of those little bits that you sometimes forget. Packaging is another one that takes far longer than you imagine.
I can't imagine.
So it's just be realistic with what you can achieve and what's possible. There's always a way to do things. There is always solutions to do things. So if you want a bigger business than the one you think you can do, there's always a way to work it out. It's just a matter of making sure that it works for you. So
Make sure that the business works for you and get clear on where you want to go. I feel like people so underestimate the value of goal setting. I work with goal setting a lot in my own coaching practice. It's so important to know exactly where you want to go. It's not enough to be like, well, I just want to be successful. I want to make money. Those are so fluffy.
Absolutely.
You're actually just going to be driving in the abyss. Like,
yeah.
What's the number? What's the profit you're going for? What's the, be specific as possible. Naomi, if someone, I was
just going to say the other thing with the goals is making sure you've then got the processes or the systems to get you there.
Yes.
Because it's very easy to set a goal because, sometimes goals get set by like, I want to achieve this. And sometimes they are guesswork because you can't always work out everything, particularly when you're new. What you're going to do to get there is put the right process in place of step by step. It doesn't have to be complicated, but if you've got a step-by-step plan to get you there, which will inevitably change because that's what happens as you grow, then you've got more chance of getting to those goals. So again, this helps you be realistic on what you can do.
Amazing, Naomi. If anyone listening is listening to this and like wanting to learn from you, wanting to get your recipes, or want to receive coaching from you because they're starting their business, what is the best way for the listeners to connect with you?
So I've got my website where you can get all my recipes. You can read my blog, so bakingboss.net. It's also got links to ways you can work with me. I do free discovery calls, so I like working with people on a one-to-one level as well. So you can book a free discovery call if you're just not sure how I can help you, or you're just not sure what you're trying to achieve. We can talk through a few ideas and then we can work out how I can support you. And I'm about quick and easy wins. Things don't have to be complicated. I like to keep it simple because I think you were more likely to succeed. And I'm on the socials, Instagram, Facebook, and I'm also on Pinterest as well. So I am Baking Boss. And I got the podcast. So I've got the Food Secrets, Baking Boss Kitchen Secrets podcast, where I just talk about basically my experience of running a cafe and some of the things I've learned along the way, some of the stories I've got on there, and things that I think people might find useful. So come and give me a listen. But all the links are on my website, so you can go and grab me there.
And I will have the links in the episode description as well. So if you want to connect with Naomi, you don't have to guess at all. You can just go find the link that you're looking for, click and connect with her immediately today. Thank you so much, Naomi, for being vulnerable, sharing your journey, allowing us to see a little bit about what this has been like for you and your expertise on how to build a baking business, even through the harshest of times. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've loved being on the show.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and letting us know your thoughts in the comments below. It truly means the world to me to hear from you. New episodes will be available every Saturday, both on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And if you would like to learn more about my work as a coach, today's guest, or have a story that you would like to share on the Pivot Point, check out the episode description for more information. Now, time for the legal stuff. This podcast is presented to you solely for educational and entertainment purposes. I may be a professionally certified coach myself, but hosting a podcast is not coaching. This podcast should not be used in substitution of working with a licensed therapist, doctor, coach, or other qualified professionals. Copy that? Amazing. See you on the next episode. Nothing but love, Jess.